Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our October Eclipse Scheduling Coordinator and Resource Expectation Information Call. My name is Brenda Corona on behalf of the Stakeholder Affairs Group. I welcome everyone who's here today and to listen into this call presented by Short-Term Forecasting, Market Operation Coordination, and a few others also who will be supporting our October Eclipse. As per a quick announcement, thanks for those who were able to pre-register for this meeting. All future stakeholder calls will be requiring pre-registration, and feel free to visit the notice or the ISO calendar to sign up. And let's go ahead and do some quick housekeeping reminders. For this call, we are encouraging any questions to be shared or any ideas or any perspectives. This call will be recorded and for informational and communities purposes only. Any related transcription should not be reprinted without the ISO's permission. So if you do have any comments, as a reminder, keep them brief and refrain from repeating any comments. We will want to definitely take our opportunity to go through as much questions that are asked. To ask a question using the WebEx tool, make sure you use the raise hand icon located in the lower toolbar. Here you will hear a beep sound, and when you're unmuted, make sure to state your full name and affiliation. The new WebEx tool does lock your ability to unmute yourself, so do not unmute yourself when you're unmuted. So that would help with us and my event producer Tegan with helping you get unmuted. So if you do have any questions, feel free to send them over to myself or Tegan, and we will be able to help out. But at this time, we want to quickly share the last two calls we had. On September 5th was an informational call at the October Eclipse. We have the link here. As well, today's call will also add more value to October Eclipse, leading on to the 14th. So for today's agenda, I'll go ahead and pass it on to Amber Motley, who will go over a few slides from her and her team, and then she'll pass it on to Brian Murray on other items from the ops side. So we definitely look forward to this hour with any questions. At this time, go ahead, Brian, you have the floor and control, and feel free to let us know if you have any questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you all. This is Amber Motley from the forecasting group. We're going to go over a couple slides that we did cover in the September 5th call as well, but we wanted to do a little bit of a review and then dive a little deeper into some of the operational setup. Let's go forward a couple slides. So next slide.
You can click that arrow up top.
Like it?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Never mind. I have. All right. So we're planning for the eclipse, which is on Saturday, October 14th. Just for those that haven't been in the previous discussion, this is an annular solar eclipse. So the sun is not going to be fully covered by the moon like we saw in 2017. It will be about 90% obscuration rates during the path that's going to move in orange, highlighted to the right of Oregon all the way through Texas. So it is hitting very significantly into the western United States, where the obscuration rates in the WEIM as well as in the CAISO will be impacted as the eclipse moves through on the 14th. The biggest eclipse impacts for California start around 8 a.m. in the morning, and then we see the solar production returning to normal around 11 a.m. With that, we dove into the key elements. So we dove into what is the impact to the CAISO BAA as it relates to solar. And then the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about what is the CAISO BAA impact to load, and then putting them together into the net load impacts that we're going to expect on the fleet. We do have a significant amount of rooftop solar as well as utility scale solar on the system. There's about 14,500 megawatts of rooftop solar on the system, and there's about 17,000 megawatts of utility scale solar on the CAISO system. With that, we see the biggest impact with the max obscuration rates hitting the California ISO BAA at 9:30 in the morning. The eclipse impacts on the solar fleet starts around that 8:05. It does start during the solar ramp period. So you see, even though the obscuration of the sun is happening, you do still see a slight pickup before we end up dropping on the solar side. The maximum drop we see is about 9,700 megawatts when you round up, at that 9:30 time period. And then the other period that we're watching very closely, which was also the same period that we had the bigger impacts in the 2017 eclipse, is the return. The return from max obscuration at 9:30 in the morning to 11:05, where the sun is back at full, is a return of about 10,800 megawatts on just the utility scale solar fleet. The utility scale solar fleet will have a potential max ramp of an average of 120 megawatts a minute. And I'll get into the ramp rates a little bit more, but just note that that is the period of watching, as this is quite a lot of movement from both the utility scale solar as well as the net load when we get into it. Similarly to the utility scale solar impact, we will see solar impacts on rooftop solar, which is about 14,500 megawatts throughout the state. So we dug into the load shapes for the three large TAC areas, SCE, PG&E, SDG&E, and compared them to other weekend days. So the gray lines that surround this graph are the load from Saturdays and Sundays in October of 2022 to show some similarities and differences. Then we also chose an average temperature day for the impact and a clear sky day. We did this to help show a high impact scenario. This is October. We could see clouds come in. This week, of course, we're hot and in the 90-degree temperature range, which has an impact as well. So we'll be closely watching the weather, but right now this is average temperature and this is clear sky conditions that we've impacted. And as we get to the day 7 forecast that go out on Oasis, you'll start seeing the weather impacts come in more for the 14th. With that, we see an increase in the load of about 2,300 megawatts, but very similarly to the rooftop or to the utility scale solar, the rooftop solar is going to significantly come back onto the system and drop the overall load impact about 6,600 megawatts from that 9:30 time period until 11. Now, what does this mean for the net load? This dives into the system-wide load just a little bit more. I'm going to skip ahead and go to the net load impacts. The net load is the combination of the impact on the utility scale solar as well as the load where the rooftop solar is sitting. This is really what the system will be feeling on Eclipse Day. Similar to the previous graph, blue is a clear sky October day, orange is the eclipse impacts that we are expecting. With that, we do see the start of the ramp time of the net load at 8:15. The end is right around that 10:45 time period. We do expect an increase in net load of about 7,300 megawatts in total from the start time to the end time, which is right around 9:15 or 9:30, and an average ramp rate during the increase in net load of 122 megawatts a minute and a max ramp rate of 194 megawatts a minute. The ramps on the time from max obscuration to the release of the sun being in full is really where you see the biggest movement. We see the net load decreasing 17,000 megawatts from 9:15 to 10:45, and the max ramp rate is 267 megawatts a minute, and the average of that is 190 megawatts a minute. In previous sessions, we did put out some ramp rates from the 2017 eclipse. Please note that the 2017 eclipse on the return had a ramp rate of around 75 megawatts a minute. So these are higher than that, it is anticipated, but this is also the return where there can be some more control on the solar releases for the grid scale. And I know that Brian and Michael will get into that in a little bit. So with that, I did see a question come in from PG&E. Thank you, Mark, for that. I'll read it out loud. Would the CAISO please confirm that the 7-day ahead CAISO demand forecast by TAC area published on Oasis will reflect forecasted eclipse impacts? Yes, we are working to make sure that everybody has visibility to the 7-day ahead forecast and that those 7-day ahead forecasts will have eclipse impacts on them. So you'll be able to see those on Oasis for the 7-day ahead. Please note that, of course, it's a Saturday So it's a Saturday morning. And then the next time that they would be posted publicly is the day 2 period of time. So please watch those. If you see any questions to them as you are planning, feel free to reach out in the appropriate forms to city tickets, et cetera, and we can get back to you. But that will be when you see that. Next question, and then I'll pass it to Ops if there's any other furthers. Will CAISO increase regulation procurement for this day? Yes, we are planning to increase regulation procurement for this day. We put some preliminary numbers in the paper. I do not remember them off the top of my head with all the other numbers, but the preliminary numbers are in there. One of the things that we are watching is lately we've been needing a little bit less regulation up. We're looking to see if during Eclipse Day that we need more regulation up than what is stated in the paper. So just note that, but we will be procuring additional regulation for that day. And Brian has the numbers. He's memorized them.
I think that's what you had.
1875 on the down and 540 on the up is what's in the paper. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this before I pass it? All right, with that, I'm going to pass it to Brian, and happy to take any other questions as you guys go through.
Thanks, Amber. Oh, if you don't mind, I can do that. All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is Brian Murray. I am the manager of Market Operations Coordination. I've also got Michael Martin in here with us as well. Michael is a senior advisor within operations. The two of us, from an operations standpoint, are working very closely with all the internal folks here at the ISO, very much with Amber and the short-term forecasting team. Do want to give kudos to Amber and team on all the analysis that they have provided us for the impact, and basically what we can anticipate, like some of the questions already with the regulation, those are going to be very key inputs into our day-ahead markets. So what I want to talk about very quickly is kind of the 3 buckets as we prepare for the eclipse. We've kind of got our pre-day ahead activities, day-ahead activities, and then real-time. So pre-day ahead, a big focus on coordination. So this meeting today, we really wanted to focus on communications with the scheduling coordinators, and specific to the CAISO BA. We have already had coordination meetings with the WEC RC customers, the PTOs or IOUs. We've also met already with the gas supply companies and adjacent BAs. So this is kind of wrapping up kind of our final round of touch points with the scheduling coordinators, and really what the focus that I wanted to emphasize here is the importance of bids and schedules for trade date 10/14. Cyber will be open for trade date 10/14 on actually a week before, so 7 days in advance on the 7th, which is a Saturday also, of course. Cyber will be open for SCs to be able, and market participants, to submit bids and self-schedules. And we would encourage you to do that. What we plan on doing on Monday, the 9th, is run some analysis based off of the bids and schedules that are in cyber, and verify that specifically with solar resources that those bids and schedules are representative of the forecasts and the anticipated impacts, and not just kind of submitting bids and schedules as you normally would on a regular day. So each day, beginning Monday 10/9, we plan on doing additional analysis, and we can do some outreach to any specific scheduling coordinators where we feel the bids and schedules are not accurately representing the eclipse impact, because we want to make sure that input is as accurate as possible, and then with support from Amber and her team as we get into the D+3 timeframe. So D+3 we will run on Wednesday, the 11th. So D+3 we'll be able to start running very specific reports, looking at our ramp capacity, energy capacity, and resource commitments expected for that Saturday. and we can make any adjustments as needed on the following couple of days. Obviously, Friday the 13th, when we run the D+1, that's our last chance to make sure that we have everything that we need fine-tuned to meet the ramp and energy needs of Saturday 10/14. So again, emphasis in that pre-day ahead is hopefully SCs can be, and market participants can be submitting those bids and schedule into cyber as early as 10/7 and continue to, if you haven't, if there are weekend personnel issues where you're not able to submit bids and schedules over the weekend, get those in hopefully by 10 a.m. on Monday the 9th, and then continue to submit if you haven't already as the week progresses. And again, like we said, we'll be doing a lot of analysis based off of those bids and schedules each day, and we can do some outreach as needed. So that kind of also ties into those day-ahead activities. Everything highlighted red on this slide are really specific for the SCs in this call. Those are the points of emphasis. Amber already touched on the regulation. Again, we'll do some on that D+3. We'll be able to start doing some detailed analysis on the regulation. The forecast for the trade date 10/14 by this time period should be getting pretty fine-tuned as well. Amber's team will, as we get closer to that trade date, I'm sure our forecasts are going to really line us up pretty well for what's actually going to happen on that particular Saturday. Into real time. So those red bullets or red text items in the real time column, those are going to be super important. So that first one, prohibit test energy, our operations engineering planning group, they are aware obviously of the Eclipse period, and they're not going to be approving any test energy plan pretty much from 0600 to 1200 on that date. Also, they'll be looking at any transmission-induced generation outages that are scheduled, or significant generation or transmission outages that are scheduled maintenance activities that are on that trade date, and be trying to reschedule those maintenance activities for a different time period. We will not plan to issue a restricted maintenance operations, an RMO, but our operations planning group will be essentially monitoring those scheduled outages and working with the entities to get those scheduled for a different time period. And then also real time, we will be setting, again, this is for CAISO BA only, we will be setting in the market the follow DOT or dispatch operating target. We'll be setting that flag in the market, so that flag will be set for all solar and battery resources in ADS. So SCs will be able to see that. In addition, they'll also set up operating instructions for solar resources to not exceed that. So as Amber illustrated in those previous slides, where we have approximately 17,000 megawatts of generation resource fleet changes in that net load, it's going to be super important as we hit that max obscuration, as the sun starts to become more prominent and solar is able to produce more. We do not want the solar resources to produce as capable. We want them to follow their dispatch operating target in ADS, because that's the market setting up the non-VER resources to be obviously decreasing their output while solar is increasing. So we want that dancing partner to be essentially in tune with one another. So again, OI instructions not to exceed dots, and the follow dots flag will be in ADS. And any resources that aren't following their dispatch operating target, then our gen dispatcher, we're going to have additional gen dispatchers on for the CAISO BA that day. We also have a gen desk support center person that will be also monitoring how resources, specifically solar and battery, that they're following DOT, and if they're not, then we'll we'll be making calls to them in real time to either follow DOT or they'll be issued an operating instruction to come offline, because it's just imperative that we have the resources following their ADS instructions. The messaging that's identified at the bottom of each of those columns, I believe a message has gone out today for many of the resources, just as a heads up about the solar eclipse, but basically D+7 on into the real-time trade date of 10/14, we'll be sending out daily M&S messages, just reminders about the solar eclipse, submitting accurate bids and schedules, following DOT. All those things will be re-emphasizing each day from day +7 into the real-time trade date. I'm going to pause there, and Tegan, if we have any questions in the queue, or if anybody wants to ask any questions, this will be a good time.
Do you see that question in your queue, Brian, from SCE?
Yeah, there was a question from SCE asking, should we expect OI for wind resources? I don't believe, and Michael, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but do we even have OI groups set up for wind? I don't believe we do.
No, we do.
So Rhett, to answer your question, the expectation is no, that we won't have OI flags set for wind resources. We do encourage, though, along those lines, for any of the VERS, it would be super encouraging and helpful to have a good amount of decremental bids for VER resources. And when the produce is capable, yes. And also during this time period, and we'll know more as we get closer with forecasting, especially for wind, we'll have a better prediction of what the wind speeds are going to be in our different wind regions. But typically, this is not a large amount during that time of day, this time of year.
Yeah, I can take the Flex Alert and demand response questions. We're getting a couple questions coming in. We do mention in the technical bulletin the possibility for Flex Alert and demand response to Southern California Edison. That is something that is also there from the 2017 Eclipse, which was an August event. We do not expect to utilize Flex Alerts and demand response for this event due to time of year. But it is a tool in the toolbox if it is needed. But right now we're not expecting to utilize the Flex Alert or demand response.
I think my last slide here basically is showing more of the coordination. I think we've covered most of this already. So again, if you have questions, now's your time. We knew we would get through the slide deck pretty quick, and hopefully some of you have already seen or attended the previous stakeholder meetings, but if not, you get a good overview here. But if you have additional questions, please ask.
As a reminder for those who are audio only, please press #2 so you can be added to our queue. And I do see a few questions. Brian, hopefully you're able to capture those.
Yeah, thank you. Again, so Eric from Edison asked if you did pull demand response, would it be preceded by EEAs? And the answer is yes. So we've got the ability to enable RDRRs, for example, in the market. We would need to be in a EEA watch or higher to enable them, and to force them, we would need to be in EEA 1 or higher. What recommendation do you have for large businesses to mitigate the effects on the grid by the Eclipse. Amber, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I think, you know, we have gotten some of these questions from the public side as well. I mean, it really should be business as usual, right? From the outtake perspective, we do expect that there are impacts to the grid where it's really important to get that forecasting information into the market so that we can optimize it, but we do not expect any impacts to businesses, residents, et cetera.
Thank you all for the questions. Keep them coming if you have more. We have time here. Question from Ross Murray. Do you expect to have the BES resources empty to help manage the solar pickup? Empty, no. Do we anticipate to have additional resources on to help with the ramping needs through the solar eclipse? Yes. So that's where the day ahead is extremely critical for us in our setup. So again, with the forecasts that we'll have in the bids and schedules, the day ahead should set up traditional non-VER resources to supplement the impacts of the solar eclipse, both from a ramping capability and from an energy necessity. So we will probably have some, like that's been some of our outreach to the gas companies, right? And that's because this time of day where we usually have solar ramping up, but we're going to have an impact to that. Obviously, our thermal and hydro resources will be leveraged more during those hours than a typical October Saturday. Also, our battery fleet is going to be instrumental with both being able to charge and discharge as needed during this time. And the day ahead will set us up for that pretty well, assuming we have good bids and schedules for the resources. And then we have some real-time tools as well. So if we need to commit some short start resources to help us with any kind of, if we had any kind of contingencies in real time that were not a part of the day ahead's, you know, optimization, like if we had some forced outages on generation resources or significant transmission, then we've got tools in real time to accommodate those contingencies. But again, loads during this time of the year on a Saturday, they're pretty low, so we also have to be cautious about committing too much additional resources. That's why we do rely on our day ahead commitments to really match us up with our predicted loads. And then we have tools in real time to accommodate any adjustments that are needed. Thanks, Ross, for the question. Any other questions? Tegan, I take it, are there any raised hands or questions that are not in the chat?
I'm not seeing any raised hands at this time.
Okay. Well, if there aren't any other questions, Brenda, thanks again for setting this up, and Amber, thanks again for all the impact analysis, and thank you guys all for joining, and we'll continue our messaging. I think we will have some post-day ahead, probably conference bridges that'll probably actually start on Thursday when we're doing our D+2. We'll have a post-day ahead conference bridge, and that'll be primarily with our PTOs. Again, that'll be for CAISO BA. And the intent of that is just to basically share what the day ahead results are, and if we need to make any adjustments prior to the D+1, that'll be an opportunity to have that discussion. All right, Brenda, over to you.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Michael. I think I see you in the room, and thank you, Amber, and your teams that have helped with this information provided to our audience here. So for Annie Wu from Calpine, just ask a quick question on, can you remind us when was it? I
The
can,
solar eclipse, yeah. Oh, so you mentioned the last solar eclipse is in 2017. Can you remind us when it was? It was August 17th of 2017. And there are analysis and post reports that are available on the public site of the 2017 eclipse. August 21st of 2017. Thank you, Jessica. August 21st of 2017. But there are some items out there on that as well that you guys can look at from the post-analysis side. And we do expect to do another post-analysis after this eclipse. As you guys know, there is another one coming in April of 2024 that is a full eclipse, but we will put some documentation out after this eclipse and present it at the Market Performance Planning Forum.
Thank you, Amber. Yeah, we'll definitely communicate that in our upcoming Market Performance Planning Forum. We host quarterly on the miscellaneous. You can see that on the user group webpage. But at this time, I don't see any more questions, but feel free to send them over. Oh, Brian, would you be presenting on this slide as well?
No, I think we captured that in the previous one, Brenda, so it's kind of a recap of the coordination but I think this was already covered, but thank you.
Okay, great. For those who are still on our call with us, we do have information captured within that link here for the CAISO Informed Meetings, Events, Miscellaneous Stakeholder Meetings. I will send that over through a link right now. I did also link the 2017 Eclipse report that Amber mentioned and Jessica as well. So those are available for everyone to reference. We will hopefully post any appropriate documents when the time comes. We also posted on the blog for the October 14th. There's also information there that were shared here today, just ways how to prepare. It's really great. Thanks to the forecasting team, Jessica, John, and Amber and her team for helping with that article. If anyone has any more questions that weren't able to be answered, if you do follow up on any other questions later on, feel free to send it over to ISO Stakeholder Affairs at CAISO.com. We'll be sure to route those back with our team or even our follow-up meeting if we do have that coming up. But at this time, thanks so much everyone for joining. We do have the blog available here, and I think we could go ahead and close our meeting. Tegan, if that's perfect, if that's good for you, if anyone has any more remaining questions.
I'm not showing any questions at this time.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. I guess we'll have this recording posted within maybe this week if we can, but if not early next week, this recording will be available for everyone to visit if those who weren't able to attend. But thanks so much for everyone. Have a nice one. Take care.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using Event Services. You may now disconnect.